Hello and welcome to episode 1 of The Sixth Man. We are here. We live, baby. The NBA season is back. It hasn't been too long, so we haven't missed it too much. But boy, am I happy for it to be back. As you know, this is The Sixth Man, so we have got 5 GMs who are on the call with me, and we've just gone through the draft. Some are happy. Some might be not so happy with their picks, considering we had a couple of games last week. We are currently recording this on Wednesday night UK time, which means the slog for staying up late for us British people is going to begin. And especially for all those GMs that have West Coast teams, I'm feeling sorry for you. You know, I've got to do my research anyway. So on today's show, we will be breaking down 2 divisions, the Atlantic and the Pacific. We will go through each team in that divisions, how they're doing in the run-up to the regular season, how they've been looking in pre-season, their off-season moves. And then we will go into a segment called Shoot Your Shot. 2 people will be pitted against each other. Another person will decide who wins that conversation. Stay tuned for what those topics might be. And then we'll finish with some NBA headlines. So what we're going to get into now is the division discussion. So each week we will pick 2 divisions to talk about, mainly because we want to explore every team in the league, make sure no one's left out. You know, there are some teams that don't get covered by the mass media. You know, the Knicks are definitely covered a lot more than they should be. Speaking of the Knicks, this is a great segue because the 2 divisions we're talking about, the first division is the Atlantic division that we're going to be talking about. We're going to break it down team by team. And we're going to start with the team that actually won the Atlantic last year. Champs from a couple of years ago. They are, we the North, the Toronto Raptors. So I'm going to head over to, he's not in the correct location for the Raptors, but yeah, he's still at the AAA arena.
Yeah, I'm still in sunny Miami.
Still in sunny Miami. Why are you in Miami?
Well, let's be honest, England's dark and depressing at the moment. There's more tears than a wedding cake. Miami, you've got the freedom there now, so it's why I'm here. Perfect location for Christmas. Who else would want to spend their Christmas in Miami? Raptors, I feel good about them. Obviously, last season, they won the Atlantic Division. Playoffs, they weren't too terrible in, but obviously could have gone better there. In terms of going into this season, Kyle Lowry's back. Obviously, he had a great season last year, and I'm sure he's going to do well again this year. Siakam, Van Vliet, he was great for the playoffs last season. So I'm feeling pretty confident about the Raptors. They're always a strong team. Yes, they lost Kawhi a couple of years ago, but last season showed that they can cope without Kawhi.
The Raptors went 2-1 in the preseason. They won both games against the Hornets. A player that I picked out was their rookie, Malachi Flynn. He's a backup point guard. He had 9 points, 4 assists in his first game, 17 points, 3 assists in the second game. Another takeaway from the Raptors, which will be important, I want your thoughts on this, Matt, is they lose Marc Gasol, they lose a backer. And looking at the rotation, those players are going to be replaced by Aaron Baines, who's their starting guard, and Chris Boucher, and they share minutes, about 20 each. So I'm wondering, what do you think about the transition of that?
I think just going forward, like, it's at the end of the day, they're rebuilding the team, aren't they, from a few years ago. They've obviously lost Serge Ibaka as well. I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see how they do. And they're obviously not as strong as they used to be, but giving those minutes, like say, to Baines and Boucher, I think they've got the ability to keep the Raptors strong, and I think they'll have a decent season. They're not my favourite team out of my roster, but I'm confident that they'll make the playoffs by the end of the season.
Well, thankfully they're not going to have Drake distracting them at the games. You know, touching the coaches.
He's going to get played in Tampa, baby. He's going to be there.
Yeah, I mean he's broken the curse, so yeah.
And he's done his ACL, so he won't be jumping on the court anytime soon either.
You say Drake's done his ACL?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that true? Damn. What's he been doing?
Last night Cry Later video when he was playing KD, I reckon.
Aubrey's out for the season.
Thank you, Matt. I was going to say on the Raptors, Are we convinced with Siakam? Like, is he the guy? Did he get found out in the playoffs? That's what I was thinking about, because they gave Freddie their money. What were we thinking about Siakam?
Well, Ed, this is, from my perspective, this is just about the regular season. Who knows if I'm going to select the Raptors by the time the playoffs come? And Siakam, he did well in the regular season last year. Obviously, he struggled with the transition due to being in the bubble. We're not in the bubble anymore in Orlando, so see what happens.
Okay.
So, let's move on to one of my rivals, the Green Machine, one of the most successful franchises in the NBA. The team came second in the Atlantic. The Boston Celtics. A couple of notes on the Celtics before I go on to the GM is they went 0-2 in the preseason, lost to my boys, and they lost to the Nets. So let's head over to the GM, and that is Mr. Matthew Bray. And before we talk about your thoughts on Celtics, I want to tell you, Bray, that we've been having some fan reactions. Okay, I've been speaking to some fans, and they've been talking about stuff, and a lot of you, I'm a bit disappointed because we have only one person who has come up with a name, and that's House Lasky. So I congratulate that.
Thank you.
But because of the theme of Bray, choosing the Heat and, being a bit of a bandwagoner, we've come up with a concept of maybe a potential logo. So I'm just going to show you this right now.
Wow, that is horrible. That is horrible.
So
Bro,
I'm gonna
I love
until you come up with a nickname, I'm gonna call you Bandwagon Bray. Okay, so let's take away Bandwagon Bray.
Okay, you're doing me dirty here. Yeah. When I went to see the Heat, it was in the middle of their regular season. Where let's remember, they were by no means a favourite. They were solidly mid-table there. They excelled in the postseason, and obviously, great for me. Jim is my boy, but yeah, you're doing me a bit dirty there. You're right, though. I will work harder. I'll get a nickname. But
Bandwagon Bray. It's sticking until you change it.
I will change it. But
talk to me about the Celtics.
The Celtics 0-2 in the preseason. It's the preseason, so I don't really want to put any stock in it. Low minutes for all of the key guys. For Jaylen Brown, for Jason Tatum. They're adding in a load of new pieces as well. The moves in the off season were by no means massive, but they lost Hayward obviously to the Hornets. And then the only other people they lose are Kanter, who, as we know, can't play Kanter, and Brad Wanamaker, who a backup point guard. Yeah, you just don't like it. It's not safe hands. They did, however, bring in this slightly aging Jeff Teague. Throwback from the Hawks days. Obviously, he is by no means what he used to be, but he's been in the league a long time. And when Kemba's not on the floor, he knows what he's doing. It's just what you need. He knows what he's doing more than Brad Wanamaker anyway. So, but the key signing for them, obviously, is Tristan Thompson. Really shores them up.
I will say my man Teague, he's shooting the best he's ever shot from three. So you're welcome.
I'll give you that. Man's efficient. Man is efficient. He's not putting up huge stats, but he's efficient. So he's obviously contributing. But yeah, as I said, Tristan Thompson, the boy, I think he's had a bad name in recent years because he had a really massive contract, which meant that everyone went, oh, he's just overpaid. He's not that good. No. He's still a really good NBA player. He has finals experience, and I think he's a perfect fit for the team. I think he'll play centre for them a lot. I think they'll probably stack the guards and the forwards, playing, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum at the small forward, power forward, so they can get Smart in that lineup as well. I think their crunch time lineup of Walker, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Thompson that's as good a five as you're going to get. They complement each other really well. They're not clogging up the paint too much, and I like it a lot. And obviously, with the quartermaster, the future president of the United States, Brad Stevens, trust me, that guy, he's such a great coach. And I think
I'm going to challenge you, Bray. because here's my point with Brad Stevens, right? If he was such a good coach, then why is Tatum playing ISO ball in the crunch in playoffs? Ask me that.
Because that's how the game is played in the playoffs. Like, you have to have someone who can go out and get you a bucket, and Tatum just needs those reps before he can get there. I fully support if I had Jason Tatum on my team and they said, all right, we need a bucket, give him the ball, man. Give him the ball. I think they've got slightly better personnel this year to complement him. And to be honest, though, I think out of the two, I think Brown is the one who could really make another jump this year. Because he's definitely the number 2 punch. I would like to see a 1A, 1B with those two.
Okay. Any more about the Celtics? What do you think?
This year, I mean, you talk about people taking a certain step in the right direction. I think because we had such a small, up there I go. Since we had such a small, such a small time in the off season, that what we saw from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum isn't going to be too dissimilar to what we're seeing from them at the beginning of this season, given the amount of time and the lack of that they had to prepare to get that much better. Usually at this point, we're wondering, oh, what have they added to their game, this and that. They had less time to do all of that this year, so they need to work on hopefully getting their efficiency up and doing that. But I'm excited for them. I'd argue that they probably got a little bit better than they were last year in terms of their roster as well. I agree with you there, Bray.
Yeah. Thank you, Bandwagon Bray. And you know what you need to do for next week. You know, otherwise these pictures will keep coming back and they will be haunting you. Okay. Now let's head over, no bias, to the best team in the NBA. Trust the process. Okay, so that's what you want to feel. I feel like the process is back. Okay, Sam Hinkie's spirit lives on forever. I love Daryl Morey. We had talks of Ben Simmons maybe getting traded. What does he do? He diffuses it straight away. I'm just such a big fan. But Wildy, tell me, what are your thoughts on the Sixers?
My thoughts on the Sixers, we only had 2 preseason games to go off with them. They went 2-0. I know that we can't really lean too much on records of preseason, but I've been watching them play, seeing how they're adjusting with things. We obviously talked about the things that people were pointing out, the holes in Ben's game potentially, but he's been playing so well. The way they've been doing it, I mean, they've got 3 ball handlers on the floor and they've been utilizing every single one of them. If there's even a hint of transitional basketball, they are outletting it straight to Ben and they're running full pelt so that he can either get to the rim, get to the free throw line, or if they build a wall like they do against someone like a Giannis, then he is skilled enough of a passer to get it out to any of the open shooters. If things are slowed down a little more, if the other team has scored and they're bringing it in, then they're more likely giving it to Seth or Tobias Harris to bring the ball up. And then they're running a high pick and roll with Embiid and they're having Ben Simmons in the dunker spot, which the people that don't know, the dunker spot is on the weak side just by the block, so that when the defense rotates over, they can dump it down to him and he can work inside on the post with his hooks. Because he took 1 3 that looked pretty confident, but it didn't go in. But again, I don't think that's really what they're going to be focusing on, because if they try to make him something he's not, it's going to be a long season, and they're talented with what they are, so they just need to hammer that home and keep moving from there. Really,
he played extremely well on the defensive end against the Pacers. Like, he just does. What's something I really value about Ben is that he tries on defense. A lot of players, they can earn their keep from scoring, and you've seen so many people just sort of log themselves out on the other side of the ball. And Shake Milton, we talk about a guy who dropped near 40 points against the Clippers out of nowhere. He's become our 6th man of the year. He had really 2 really good games. Yeah. And Tyrese Maxey has impressed me as well.
Absolutely. Shake Milton, he got 19 in the first game, 15 in the second. He's having an absolute party off the bench, so he's doing really well. I'm liking what he's doing. So yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. I think the other thing as well is I think it's quite interesting. You obviously added Dwight Howard into the lineup, where if you're obviously starting with Joel, Dwight had a chance to start in game 2 of the preseason because Joel was out. But what I think is a really interesting sort of duo, not at the same time on the floor, but you're playing against Embiid, who stretches the floor. He's a very skilled and mellow type player. And then all of a sudden you have him on the bench. You bring in Dwight Howard, who's high energy, pick and roll type player. It's just a really weird dynamic that defenses are going to have to deal with because there's two very different styles of players that are really good at what they do. Ultimately, it boils down to Dwight Howard being a really good pick and roll player and Joel Embiid being a pick and pop player. So you really got to have your wits about you when they're making their rotations.
Speak about Dwight Howard. I saw a couple of shakes ahead from Bray. I don't think he's on the Dwight Howard train. I'm on it because he's on my team and he's a champion. But Bray, tell me why you're not feeling this.
So I was out on Dwight Howard last season when he was with the Lakers. I was like, this guy is going to be terrible. There's no way he's going to contribute. Like, his career is over, and he proved me wrong. But that didn't stop like these weird little stories. Like, that guy is a weird guy. He just doesn't like mesh normally with people.
What stories you hear?
Like, I think,
tell us the stories.
Yeah.
It's just like you guys remember the Kelly Oubre comments when he was on the Wizards, like shit like that. Like that guy is. I think he likes to go out a lot. I think when LeBron's on a team, LeBron can be like, Dwight, shut up, sit down, and stop just doing this crazy shit. But without someone like that, I think Dwight could just be. He could be less than a zero. He could just be disturbing that locker room. Maybe I don't rate him. But I will say on the Ben Simmons front, and I do have a bit of an investment there. Fantasy team. He was first team on defense last year. That guy is seriously good. But Wildy, what would you say to the prospect of a James Harden trade? Obviously, they said it's not coming anytime soon, but what do you think? Do you think you'll be seeing James Harden in the Sixers?
Well, whenever anybody is talking about eventual trade and having James Harden go to Philadelphia, the only murmurs that are saying is that look, it's going to have to be Ben for James. If Ben plays at the kind of level that we've seen him play at, as Alex says, on defense and from what we've seen from him on offense in the preseason, moving forward, it's just not going to be a situation I want to walk into and trade that up. If he's given this kind of production, then there's no reason to make the move because they're going to be successful with what they already have. They've made the moves they want to make. Bringing in James Harden isn't, necessary for them. So if they can figure this out, then it's not going to be something.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to head to the fourth team, but before I do that, sorry. I'm going to put another person on blast. Okay, so
I was waiting for it. I knew it.
The person that I'm going to, he's looking very nervous right now, and he should be. He's having a good draft, and he potentially picked one of the most shocking teams. Even somebody who's a fan of them was against them. Anyway, so because this guy's name is Jordan. I thought, why not link him to the greatest player of all time? But because he chose the Chicago Bulls in his draft, I'm not linking him to the one that we all remember. I'm linking him to Wizards Jordan.
I'll take that.
So, we're going to call you Jordan 03. You should have never come back. You should have never Chicago Bulls. Keep it there. You hit the game-winning shot. You won a championship on your last ever shot. It was the perfect shot. Just don't come back. Look, we all know you can play. We all know you can play. But I just want to get into that. But now we talk about the team. and that is the Brooklyn Nets. This is something which is really interesting. You know, we've got Kyrie, Mr. Sage, pre-game doing all that nonsense. But can I just say, I don't like the guy and what he does outside of it, but on the court, one of the best one-on-one players, and I can't even deny that guy is a straight wizard. George, how are you feeling about the Nets?
Bro, what can I say? We is back, first of all, for the NBA. Like you said, short break. I'm happy it's back. And for this moment, for the KD and Kyrie matchup in Brooklyn, boy, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't waiting or excited for this. Like, I was always counting down for that next season when they're playing. When you're watching the Brooklyn Nets, you're thinking, oh, if Kyrie and KD were there, oh, beautiful. So I'm glad it's finally here. First game was good, and Steve Nash is there, and he got a win for his first game. So that's big up to him, and it was a beautiful game to watch, to say that. Watching them move the ball and pass it about, I think before we actually got to see them, like, a lot of people are worried with the Kyrie and KD matchup with having the balls in their hands too much and how that would work. But I think, like, last night's game kind of proved that it works well. Like, it was really good game, really good and entertaining. Like 125-95, final score was.
Have you heard of the KD and Kyrie nickname? I just saw it briefly. It's 7-Eleven, which I really like that a lot. I know that's not, you know, for all of the people listening in the UK, it's not British based, and I can't think of a UK nickname, but I really like that as well. In terms of what they did last night, 26 points from Kyrie in 25 minutes. He was whoever was guarding him. It was a score. It was a bucket. You've got two shooters. Somebody that I really like, Landry Shamet, is going to get a lot of open shots. Joe Harris he got a big contract. He's going to get a lot of open shots. All they need to do is make threes. You know, that's as easy as possible. The one thing that I found really interesting is they've got Dinwiddie starting, and they've got Karis LeVert coming off the bench. He had a really good game as well.
Incredible game.
Yeah. And then they also won the rebounding battle last night, and they shot 42%, as you guys, as we spoke about before, really well from three. They said live and die by the three, but to be honest, that's just another alternative. They've got so much depth on that team. They've got Jarrett Allen, who is somebody that maybe be an asset moving forward, but if they keep him, he could potentially end up going in the starting lineup. I don't know. Does anybody have any other comments about Brooklyn Nets? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, as I watched the first half of the game last night, and I have to say, considering the Warriors are in my roster, I was very impressed by Brooklyn and very disappointed by the Warriors last night. So I'll touch more on that later. But yeah, the Nets were really impressive. Kyrie his handles are outstanding, and KD looked pretty good considering it was his first game back in a long, long time.
I was quickly also wanted to say sort of what you were saying, Alex, with Karis LeVert, what Jordan was saying about the 7-Eleven, and what Matt was saying about the Nets offensively. They just looked so smooth. Like, they were moving the ball around so nicely, and they were finding the open man. But then again, they could drop it off to Kyrie and KD, and they could play iso ball and get buckets. And like, shit, that's the best combo for an offense. You can get a bucket at will with KD or Kyrie, but then you can also move the ball around in the half court. And Karis LeVert, when he came on, was just such instant offense. He must be loving getting to work against all those second units in the NBA, saying, cool, I've got you on skates. He was doing this in the playoffs, albeit the Nets didn't win anything, but he was doing it in the playoffs last year. He's now doing it against second units. I'm actually worried about what the Nets can do this year. They look really good. But then again,
very dangerous.
Can't really say too much about their defense because it didn't look like the Warriors knew what they were doing on offense. So I guess their defense we'll see when they come up against the sterner test.
We'll get to the Warriors. We've got a lot to talk. We've got a lot to uncover about the Warriors. We will get to that later in the show. Let's head back to Ed with the last Atlantic team, the New York Knickerbockers.
No one's as excited about
Sorry,
that.
just clap for yourself
Listen,
there, Ed.
listen, Ed, you were over 500 in the preseason. That's all I'm going to say. It's not going to happen again.
So I hate those sort of stats because they're completely misleading. The teams they played twice against the Pistons and twice against the Cavs.
Oh, you were over 500,
But it's against two
Still.
shit teams. We're going to be better than
Three
those.
and one. Go on, Ed. How do you feel?
All right, hear me out. So obviously looking at it, I was like, it's the fucking Knicks. But then I was reading quite a few stuff from the beat writers in New York and just getting a bit better understanding of the team. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if we've got a couple breakout players like RJ, sophomore year. You know what? He can do bits. You've got Obi Tobin. Rim running, okay, defense has always been a question, but he can get you buckets in the low post, hopefully, and that's what the Knicks are hoping. Mitchell Robinson, I mean, him and Obi Tobin could be a fun little matchup they've got there in the front court. Okay, I'm not expecting them to make the playoffs. I'm not expecting them to have 40 wins, but 20 wins, 20, okay, more than 20 wins. Let's say, potentially, could they get 30 wins? They're better than, I think, a lot of the other lower teams in the East. I do think they have a bit more potential. And Bray, I see you shaking your head, but remember who their coach is as well. I haven't asked you about this person, but I know who the coach is, and I think you like this coach as well.
He does.
Leave it at that. And I think that is the overriding thing. Like, you know what, with Thibodeau, can he light a fire up maybe RJ's arse or Obi Toppin or maybe Mitchell Robinson or even quickly, you know, people seem to like him. He might be really good. I don't know. We'll see. Could be fun.
Ed, I have a question based off Emmanuel quickly.
Go on.
How many games before he becomes the starting point guard in that team? Because a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people like him. I know that Elfrid Payton's future's at stake, something which you have a bit of share in. How are you feeling about that?
So I'll address it. So when I was looking at the roster, I completely forgot Dennis Smith Jr. was also on the Knicks roster. And I was like, oh man, I do feel bad for him because I remembered that draft. That was the Lonzo draft, the De'Aaron Fox draft. There were quite a few point guards that year. And I think he went 10th that year to Dallas. Didn't turn out how he wanted to, part of the Porzingis trade. Yeah. I was really hoping he can push on, but it doesn't seem like it. And I'm just looking at the Knicks' schedule. Alfred should be the starter up until Game 4 against Cleveland. I think that's when they maybe can drop him in. Considering he had a good preseason game against them, I reckon Game 4 against Cleveland is when he could start. And that's not a bad starting lineup, I would say. No, it's not too bad. Maybe I'm just overestimating it. It'll be.
I think it's good to be an optimist.
It'll be quickly Alec Burks, RJ, Obi, Mitchell Robinson. That could get a couple wins, no? Maybe.
Yeah, a couple.
Also,
all right.
There's also a fun fact out of New York. They actually signed Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who was the second pick. Geez, I think it's back in 2014. They've actually just released him, which is crazy.
So, a couple things. Go on, Bray.
There's a reason for that, though, isn't there? I think they signed them and then released them for the rights, so they can bring it back later in the season if they want. I think that might be it.
I'm not too sure on that, to be honest with you. That's the first I heard. I just saw he was released. He'll be back.
So I've just seen the future, and the Knicks end up with 5 wins. So disregard everything I just said. So last thing I'll say about the Knicks, Alex, you were saying about their signing of players. I saw that the Knicks don't have any players in their squad over the age of 30, which make of it what you will. I don't think it's necessarily a good sign. Saying that, as you mentioned earlier, Alex, Knicks do get a lot of mainstream media talk. And you get those talking heads, obviously, in New York, ESPN, whatever. And they were saying that they were confused. Some were confused about the Knicks signings. They signed these random-ass players on 2-year contracts. The reason being is they want to get into the good books of some of the agents of players. And if they help out some clients, it can help them in the future with other clients gaining contracts. the other good thing about these short-term contracts is that it provides more flexibility in the future. Whereas they've gone wrong previously, they may give someone a 4 or 5 year contract, Gordon Hayward, sorry, and they'll get stuck on their books for multiple years and can't get rid of them. So these shorter contracts help them with their, you can sort of say, cash flow in the long term, being able to move around and pick free agents when they would like to. So that's sort of their process moving forward. That's their thinking, which sort of works in the long run. But for me, for what we're doing this year, doesn't work for me. I need wins, baby. I need wins. But yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, this isn't like, you know, you aren't tied down to a 4-year contract with the Knicks and you can escape. Thank you guys for all your thoughts on Atlantic. We'll take a quick break and we'll go into Pacific. Here we are. We've just spoke about the Atlantic and we're going to move on to the Pacific. We are going to go back to 03 Jordan. And we're going to talk about the reigning champs, the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron picked up his 4th ring in the bubble. They've drastically improved in the offseason. Went 4-0 in the preseason. They had a game last night. George, how did it go?
Yeah, so ring night. Great celebration as usual. Obviously, everyone would like to still have that win on their ring night. But unfortunately for the Lakers tonight, last night, that wasn't to be the case. Ended 109-116 to the Clippers. What can I say about that game? Like, LeBron James ended with 22, AD 18. But Paul George, and I should be talking about the Lakers, but Paul George just went off that night. It seemed like everything he was doing was just disrupting from one end of the floor to the other, just getting those buckets in, really. 3-pointer inside, and then, of course, Kawhi Leonard as well, getting in there and doing damage. So, yeah, it was just, I think the Clippers felt like from last season they had something to fight back for from their performance from last season, and they showed it that night, really. Yeah.
One thing I realised, the outcome of that game was really interesting. So in the first quarter, the Clippers go on this big run. They're up by near enough 20 points. Lakers bring it back at halftime, and then the third quarter is a bit uneven. And then, as you said, Paul George explodes in the fourth quarter. However, LeBron isn't on the floor when this happens. Yes, AD's on the floor. He's a great defensive player, but like, I just think that LeBron, while he spoke about Westbrook and taking it up to another level, LeBron is the best person to do that. He knows when to lock in, and you know he can do more than just doing a black screen on Instagram.
Yeah,
to do that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I was stating in terms of the Clippers were hungry for that game. It seems way more hungry, and to just leave LeBron out of the fourth quarter, I feel like the Clippers were there to fight and prove something. Again, what I mentioned for last season, really, with that.
One question for you, George. Would you have extended Kyle Kuzma? He just recently got a big extension, and they just paid him some money. He's more likely going to be more of a bench player coming off for their second unit, which is considerably strong.
Yeah. Me personally, from a aspect or familiarity aspect, I would have loved to keep Kyle Kuzma. I see that, but in terms when you're thinking about it in a more smarter way with the players which they have on the roster, I feel like you mentioned before, for what they're paying for him and what they're giving him, it does seem like at the moment that he will be getting minutes, which I feel that he can play, and I feel he's proven that he can play and contribute to the team on a big level. I feel with the signing, it's a major shaky area right now on what's going to be next for Kuzma. So just have to keep watch for that.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that is a fantastic contract for Kyle Kuzma. Is he with Clutch? Because they drafted him. Like that.
Don't get wrong. It's a great contract, but I'm talking about in terms of the usage that he'll be seeing. in comparison to the roster. That's what I'm looking at in terms of how the Lakers will be using him going forward.
And I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's perhaps a trade-friendly contract, and they
Yeah.
might be looking to flip for someone who fits that roster, as you say, a little bit better than
Yeah,
Cole
that's
Kuzma.
what I'm thinking.
Interesting. Right, let's move on to House Lasky. He's actually currently, I don't know if this was planned, he's in sort of Clippers colours. So we're going to go to the other side of LA.
Clippers and Knicks colours.
So the Clippers, they lose in Game 7, have a massive meltdown to the Nuggets in the bubble. Pretty shocking, to be honest. I know LeBron spoke about it on his podcast, and they were pretty confident they would end up facing them. There's a lot of changes in the offseason. They fire Doc Rivers, pick up Ty Lue. Ed, how are you feeling about the Clippers? They obviously played last night. We just spoke about it. What did you see?
So I want to take it back to take it forward. I did sports science at A level, and I remember one of the things that stuck out to me is doing team dynamics and how the evolution of a team, the phases a team can go through. And remember, for that specific theory, it was forming, storming, norming, performing. I would say last year, Clippers went through their forming and storming phase. So forming, they got Kawhi Leonard, they got Paul George, they got their team. They thought, it'll be fine and dandy. You know what? We'll just turn up for the playoffs. The regular season doesn't matter. We'll load manage, whatever. We'll turn up in the playoffs. That didn't happen. That's when they went through their storming phase where, you know what? Paul George doing the finger blaming. I hated what he did on All the Smoke, being like, we just didn't make any adjustments. Like, come on, why can we make any adjustments? Like, come on, grow the fuck up. Like, take some responsibility over your role and not just put it on Doc Rivers. Anyway,
Pandemic P.
So that's what I feel is that's their storming phase. I'm hoping now this year is their norming and performing phase of their team building. They've got Ty Lue in. I was going to say there's the players can't say much to Ty Lue because he's got a chip, but same thing about Doc Rivers. And we won't get into that Boston Celtics chip and how like a lot of those players are still riding the coattails of that one chip. But yeah, anyway, Paul Pierce, I mean, saying that, take it back to the Clippers. Hopefully Ty Lue can notice, hey, this is where we're going in terms of the team dynamic. Kawhi, you have to be out for your team. You can't do what you were doing last year because look at how it ended. We have to go all in the regular season, and then in the playoffs, that's when we have to have our peak performance. That's the sort of psychology I'm looking at it, and team dynamic. Or it might just be me talking myself into the Clippers, having the top seed because we are doing a regular season draft. That's my thinking about them overall. So I was looking at their box score from last night, and then when I saw that Nicholas Batum played 28 minutes, I'm like, oh shit. I'm not sure how I'm feeling. To be fair, he got six assists and 6 rebounds, 3 points. But as you mentioned earlier, Alex, we're in the UK, so it's hard to watch West Coast games that tip off at 3:00. So I doubt many UK lot watch this, but we'll see. I mean, I'm not buying into Paul George hype for the playoffs. Good thing, again, it's just regular season. I know Paul George can ball out in the regular season, so long may this continue.
I was following them through pre-season. They went 0-3. Yeah, they played the Lakers twice, lost once to the Jazz. In their games, there was 18 players played over 20 minutes. I thought they were trying to do load management to the whole team. And then, they come out first game. Paul George played 36 minutes last night. Kawhi played 34. And don't get me wrong, Paul George, 13 of 18 from the floor and 33 points in 36 minutes. I know he gets a lot of slander. And I want to speak to Matt about this, coming from someone from an introductory phase, because Paul George is somebody who I think, in a sense, gets abused by basketball fans for not bringing it, and especially when in the moments that matter the most. What are your thoughts on Paul George, Matt?
Well, as someone who's obviously much newer to the NBA than the rest of you guys, from what I've been hearing, obviously Paul George, yes, and it was proven in the playoffs last year. Pandemic P, when it came to the crunch time, he bottled it. No two words about it. Yeah, exactly. Not to say anything that demeans him as a player or anything. He's obviously still got that ability, but yeah, I do think that he's a great player, as proven by last night's performance. But yeah, like when the crunch comes, can he bring it up? You know what? I do think that the Clippers probably can do, and I think he is, along with Kawhi, I think more than capable of bringing the Clippers to probably the conference finals this season. Whereas obviously they famously missed out last year. Yeah, I think there's always something more wanting from Paul George.
Yeah, you're always wanting more with P. I think, can he get to the next stage? Is interesting. Let's head over to Wiki Wow Smith.
All right.
And let's head over to the Valley. Is it hot in Arizona?
Bit spotty. It was definitely hot for a lot of their guys in their game 4. So, in terms of what they want to be looking to do in the regular season, they actually had a whole different range of starting lineups due to Chris Paul only playing 2 of the 4 games. Jay Crowder missed 2 of the games as well. So it just led them to have, a few different lineups, so they weren't too sure. They were playing around with that power forward spot. In games 1 and 2, they had Jalen Smith and Cameron Johnson because of Jay Crowder not being there. But as soon as he came back, he was the obvious choice for them. So he can guard multiple positions and hit that 3. These are one of the main reasons that I picked them, and then as I explained within our draft. The fact that they lost all 4 of their games, they played the Jazz the first 2 games. It was actually really even. I was looking at the summaries of the first game. It was really even, but it just came down to 3-point shooting. Utah hit 7 more threes than them. It was 17 to 10 threes, and that put them over the edge, really. So the fact that they did that without having Chris Paul, pretty interesting stuff there. Game 2, they got smoked on the balls. Rudy Gobert got 20. And their highest rebounder was Dayton. So the Suns weirdly have quite a steady average of rebounds between every single player. The highest rebounder only having 8 to 20 is a little bit misleading, but the numbers, it was 37 to 54 rebounds in that game 2. And then it got a little bit more interesting against the Lakers. The games were a lot closer. They had Jay Crowder back, Chris Paul for one of those games. The games were decided between a point or 3 in both games. So I think once they have everybody together and clicking, it's going to look really good. In the preseason, when things are inconsistent with the lineups, you want to look at how each individual player is doing by the end of it. In Game 4 against the Lakers, all starting 5 players were in double figures, as well as Galloway off of the bench. So it's looking pretty good. A lot of the guys are getting comfortable, and they've got some guys they got coming back that are looking pretty good to be more this season.
Led by Chris Paul, the first true point guard, the best player to control a team, and like you said, Chris Paul is on steroids. And he's also, the best person in commercials in the league so far. Those State Farm adverts are really good. I really rate them. I can't stand American commercials, but those are very good. So I hope he keeps on doing those. Interesting team to look out for. I'm really hoping for Booker and Ayton's sake that they really make a push towards the playoffs. I think Monty Williams is the best person to help them get there.
What's really good about it is that now that you've got, because of CPB in there, Devin Booker, he averaged 6 assists last season. But now with Chris Paul, there's a really good link up between him and Ayton, and it would just allow Booker to be Booker. I mean, he's such a complete offensive player that he's scoring from wherever he wants to. And now he doesn't have to worry so much about getting the assists, even though we know he's capable of it. Yeah.
Nice little Game of Zones reference coming up. I didn't even know we put this together. I swear I didn't plan it. But, we're actually doing the Sun Kings We're moving from the Phoenix Suns to the Sacramento Kings. Still waiting on them joining forces.
Our Sun Kings.
The Sun Kings. Let's go to Bandwagon Bray. I know you still haven't thought of a name. I'm still going to do it.
I resent that.
How are the Sacramento Kings doing?
The Sacramento Kings did all right. They had a decent preseason with Mr. 2K generic Kyle Guy, who I'm sure no one has ever heard of, hitting a walk-off game winner against the Warriors out of nowhere. Dude had 20 points in that game. Kyle Guy, he is like, never heard of him before until I saw him make this game winner in a preseason game. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously the guy's good. He's on a team, but yeah, there you go, Kyle Guy. In terms of what they did in the off-season, honestly, don't like it. Don't like it at all. They let Bogdanovich walk for nothing. You got to at least match the offer, and you got to sign him and then get something for him. Like, that's just GM 101. They draft Halliburton, who that's could be a solid player. The benefit of losing Bogdanovich is now that now Buddy Hield can soak up more shots, more minutes, and you kind of have their key three in Fox, Hield, and Marvin Bagley, who has been touted as he was a top pick in his draft and hasn't been able to deliver on the same level as someone like Ayton, for example, who's a relatively good comp. But he's got talent. And if he's able to make the jump, this team could be something. Obviously, they've got a lot of dead weight on this team with the likes of Harrison Barnes. And yeah, there's just not that many. Hassan Whiteside, that is more dead weight right there. Jabari Parker. That's a lot of minutes and a lot of shots that you just don't want to see. Fingers crossed, they play their young guys, get some development. I think there is an argument to say that they are, on paper, probably the worst team in the Pacific. I would say on paper, they could easily be the worst team. And I'm just waiting for the Chris Paul experiment to not work out. I'm waiting for him to piss some people off there and that not work. I'm waiting for the Golden State Warriors experiment to not work. I think the Golden State haven't got enough. I think Draymond's, he's not 100%. And I'm waiting for the Sacramento Kings to come snooping around and just steal a few games here, steal a few games there. And the absolute best case scenario for them, sneak into the play-in in the 11th spot and then lose a game to whoever's going to be there. That is the best case scenario for this team.
Right, I'm going to let you finish. But Kings possibly had one of the worst GMs of all time. Okay, so you need to concentrate on your team instead of talking smoke to other teams. And you need to put some respect on Chris Paul's name.
Yeah, what experiment you talking about?
The Scrooge of the NBA. What's with that?
Yeah, exactly. Look at this sort of hater over here. God.
Making it sound like he's DeMarcus Cousins. No, he's on the Rockets and your squad.
Chris Paul is insanely talented, but he is difficult to work with, some might say.
Confused with James Harden, also on the Rockets.
Yeah.
I mean, look, he has quite an abrasive personality, I feel. And especially with someone who is just evidently so much more talented in Booker, it'd be interesting to see what that dynamic turns out with. There is potential it goes south, at which point I reckon the Kings are in a good position. And if that doesn't happen, the Kings ain't looking that good.
Quickly, just want to say one thing. Who from the Kings starting lineup will make it into the Suns starting lineup? None.
No one. No one.
That's a mic drop right there.
Yeah, there's no one.
And Buddy's my boy.
Yeah, it's just a shame that obviously Buddy and Booker play the same position. To be fair, you could probably slide Buddy in there and move Booker to the 3 or something. But that would be the move. And then maybe if Chris Paul goes down, you put him Fox. But literally, it's just injuries and blow-ups is really the only way. Are you guys
trying to make the Sun Kings happen here? Is that what you're trying to do? It's not happening. It was all fictional.
Hey, the King's wish.
We're going to talk about teams not doing well. I'm going to go to the last team on the Pacific. We're going to head to Matt. Just before I intro this team, have you called the fire alarm? Are the alarm bells ringing? Because what I saw last night, I don't know.
There's 72 games in the season. That's all I'm going to say.
You better step up on that.
That's all I'm going to say. No. 72 games. The first one, Draymond Green was injured. It was obvious that the Warriors couldn't handle the Nets' offense last night. Kyrie, KD were just making them look silly. There was options everywhere across the court. They were missing that commander. And that is what Draymond Green gives them on the floor. He's going to be back, apparently, for the Christmas Day game against the Bucks. I guess we'll see how he is there and what effect that has on the Warriors. But it's not over just yet. There's nothing to be alarmed about too much. I think James Wiseman, he had a good game. I think he picked up about 19 points, 6 rebounds, something like that. Steph, yeah, he was a little bit off, but he's still got a double-double. It's not horrendous. It's just not good.
It's, to be honest, I watched that game last night. I looked at Steph on the bench after he checked out. The Warriors trailed for 20 to 30 points for most of that game.
Yeah.
And you've got Curry. He dropped a double-double. He got 20 points, 10 assists. But it's Andrew Wiggins. Okay, Andrew Wiggins, he thought that he was the guy that, they could get A on the project and he doesn't do much work, when you see Clay. Because Clay, he wasn't injured before. But now that Clay is out of there, he has to step up and do some work in this group project. This guy, 4 of 16, 4 turnovers. He's not going to handle the pressure. And to be honest, he's going to be out. He's going to be out before long. That's my thing.
Yeah, that's the main concern, I think, is obviously like Steph, Kelly Oubre Jr., he can step up when needs be. But yeah, I think it's with Wiggins. He's the one. Everyone's been waiting for him to step up for some time. Last night, he didn't. Last night was a good opportunity for him to show his authority, really. And he just didn't take that opportunity whatsoever. But you know what? It's a long season. I'm still fairly confident. Obviously, it was a damaging blow. But yeah, I think there's some still positives to be taken from it, especially with Wiseman, who could well be up for Rookie of the Year by the end of the season. And yeah, it's not the end.
Yeah, I think he made a 3 as well, which was really impressive. To be honest, I feel really sorry for Steph.
Yeah,
I think for them to be what we expect them to be, he's going to have to be the MVP of previous years.
Yeah.
And he has to take on a lot more. And don't get me wrong, he's one of the only players that can do that. It's just he's gone through a lot, and he's had injuries, and the wear and tear. I'm unsure. Like that first game, it is one game, but alarm bells will be ringing in my head.
I think if Steve Kerr is offered an 8th seed place now in the playoffs, I think he'd take it.
He take 11th place in that play because the West is stacked, and they got some tough nights ahead of them.
It's not stacked because of the Kings. Don't get yourself happy. But,
After last night, I'm liking the Kings more than the Warriors. I know I don't have Steph Curry, but
whoa.
What I could think about with Curry last night is the Kevin Hart scene where he's like, "Help me, help me." I'm not going to say the rest of it, but I felt for him. I was like, Steph, he must be thinking, he must have been having dreams of him and Clay just draining these threes, and now it's all gone. And he looks to his right, and who is there? Andrew Wiggins. Such a shame.
Hey, I'll take Harrison Barnes over Andrew Wiggins. I genuinely would.
Yeah.
Alex, let's actually bring you into this. So we'll get your first prediction of this. So tell us who you think at this point, week 1, who you think will win the Atlantic and who will win the Pacific.
Interesting. Well, actually, that's a good segment. So the like the scores are really early on right now, but actually in first place we have Ed. He's actually 1-0. You know, he's won his first game of the
Never lost, undefeated, never lost, never.
And then you've got George. He's 1-1. He obviously won with the Nets.
One
He
up, one
lost to
down.
the Lakers. And then Matt, you're 0-1, and then Brian Wilder, you haven't played yet. Who I think is going to win the Atlantic?
Don't say Philly.
I don't. No. I'm not even going to say Philly because I still need to watch them tonight. I was so impressed by Brooklyn, and the fact of KD. Like people, you know, they were expecting him. Oh, is he going to be the same player? KD's a killer. You know, he's the most unguardable player in the league. He can stop on a dime. Nobody's blocking his shot. He's 7 foot tall, and he's like can ball handle like a guard. That's my pick for the Atlantic. For Pacific, I think the Lakers, mainly because of the depth. They've got a lot of additions. Also on ring night, a lot of teams put in bad performances after getting their rings. I remember when the Warriors did it a couple of years ago. They got spanked by the Spurs by like 30 points on opening night when Kevin Durant's like his first game. So I'm not worried about that. I think it's just the ring hangover. So that's who I would say.
And actually, to flip it as well, last thing, who will be bottom of each division?
Bottom of each division. Ed, sorry, it's going to have to be the Knicks. I think that's a pretty easy call. And for the Pacific, I would say... Oh, Matt, it really could go bad for you. If I had the Warriors, I'd be freaking out right now. I think they're going to end up tanking a season because next year's draft is stacked. I'm going to say the Kings, though. I think Kings are going to be the worst.
Boring. All right.
The Warriors are in a whole lot of trouble. Okay, that water is slowly rising up. I'm not even lying.
It's going quick.
I think you guys are overreacted about the Warriors. I don't think it's going to be.
Well, that's what we're here for, Wildy. You know, a bunch of overreactions. You know, and just you better be careful, Wildy, because you know I've given out 2 nicknames, and you're next. Okay, so you better be careful.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Oh, I can't wait either. I can't wait. So
we'll check on the.
I'm going to give him my team name. He'll deny me and give me my name.
In 3 weeks' time, when we revisit these divisions, we'll see how much your opinions have changed, Alex, on these teams.
Yeah. So that wraps up the Pacific. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with the next segment.